Welcome back to the Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I'm in my van. It's 8 a.m., already 27 degrees and very muggy. Joining me today, though, is Jenn Chow. She is in America. Not America, sorry. She is in Japan, and it's about 4 degrees, I think you said, over there. So I would love to swap. But Jenn, you're an Asian American lesbian. You're living in Japan. You're an empowerment and joy coach, and you help women reconnect with their true selves to create a life of freedom, joy, and truth. You are preaching to the choir. Honestly, you sound amazing, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
Of
I
course.
love just listening to just hearing how hot it is there. I'm like, give me some of it. I want that sunshine.
I'd happily trade right now. Let's dive right into the deep questions, because I think we've got a lot of important stuff to cover in our chat today that people are going to get a lot of value from. And when we first met, a theme that really came out for me was this sense of belonging. And I think a lot of us in the LGBTQI plus community really struggle with finding a sense of belonging. And I know that in your culture, that's added another layer of complexity. So I'd love to hear from you, what has it been like from little Jenn growing up? Did this sense of belonging, was it there when you were little? How did this unfold?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. It absolutely was not there when I was a kid. I was born in Taiwan and I moved to America when I was 2. And right off the bat, I couldn't speak the language. My family couldn't really speak the language. So I was an immigrant. And I just remember being at school, it was really difficult for me. I was placed in ESL. I was kind of like ostracized. I was taken out of the class sometimes and taken into a little like classroom where a few other little students, we had to study English. And it just felt, it was just that ostracizing feeling that I got from a very young age. And I remember being told, speak English. You're in America now. You have to learn how to speak English. And then it was just, okay. So I think even now I internalize that as a trauma. Like it was being told you didn't belong. So that was the first sense of belonging that I did not have. And then as I got older and I started to realize, okay, I'm not the same as everybody else. I think I might be attracted to women. In my culture, in Asian culture, and back in those days, it was so unspoken of, and like no one I knew was in the community. No, at least nobody that I knew who looked like me. And so I had no one to really talk to. I never experienced any outward homophobia, so that was very good. But it was all just it just didn't exist. So I just felt like I didn't exist. My experiences didn't exist. I didn't exist. My feelings don't exist. So what was wrong with me? And so that was really difficult. And growing up, I just felt there was always something wrong with me. And I didn't know what to do. I just kind of thought, well, everywhere that I looked, this was not the way to live. This was not the way to feel. So I have to be this certain way. I have to be the good daughter who gets married and has kids, has 2 kids. They have to learn how to play piano. Yeah. There's so many specifics of things that people before me have done, and that's just how I was supposed to live my life, because that's that's what my parents did. They came all the way to America to give me the education and all that stuff, and how could I disobey them and disgrace them or something like that? It got really, really difficult to a point that I felt I don't know if I want to live this life anymore. And so I got to a point where, yeah, it got really bad. And I decided, you know what? I got an opportunity to work in Japan. I just, for the longest time, I wanted to get out of America. For me, it's just America was very, very, it was like an enclosed space and it's getting smaller and smaller. And so for that, I applied for a job in Japan and I got it. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? Let me just let me just go overseas for a year or two and let me live
Yeah.
my life. Who cares? Let me just go crazy and just live my life, and then I'll come back. And then I'll come back and I will be the good girl and I will live that life that you want me to live. So I left and I've been here ever since.
Wow.
Now I'm back. But yeah, but being overseas and being in a place where nobody knew who I was, it was so freeing. And
Mm,
and in Japan already, because I was a foreigner, I was already seen as somebody who didn't belong.
right.
And it wasn't like I tried to belong because I came in knowing that I didn't belong. And in
Mm.
that helped me find my place of belonging.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Say more about that.
so I think it was just, ever since I was a kid and I lived in America and all that, like I felt like I wanted to belong. I really, really wanted to belong here. I wanted to belong amongst, English speakers. I wanted to belong among my friends. I wanted to be normal. But when I came to
Mm,
Japan and I was already not normal because I lived in a very, very, it's a little countryside where nobody spoke English. And right off the bat, like, yes, I looked Asian, but like you spoke to me, I'm like, I have no idea what the heck you're talking about. They
yeah.
looked at me, I was like, this, what? And so I knew I was going to come in. I didn't know the language. So I thought, whatever, it doesn't matter. Knowing that I didn't belong, I just had to, I had to make my place of belong. I had to find my people. Yes, I found a community of among my coworkers who were other foreigners, other English speakers, but we all had such different lives. And then I thought, okay, I'm not gonna find anything here. Really, no, nobody was really, in the LGBTQ QIA plus community. But I thought, okay, it's all good. Let me let me
Mm,
let me find people. But then I started to realize, because we're all expats and people leave. I realized I need to find myself. I need to find
mm,
comfort because I was attaching a lot of my sense of belonging, a lot of my happiness, my acceptance, and I wanted people to accept me and blah blah. I was attaching so much of it to external people, external forces, external factors, and they always left. And it was always
yeah.
so hard for me to deal with that until I realized why. Like what like I need to find that peace within myself, that acceptance within myself, that happiness within myself. I have to create that by myself. And when I started to, I finally felt okay. Like I finally started to feel like I belong somewhere. And it's not
Wow.
a place, it's not a location that you feel that sense of belonging. It's within yourself that you feel that sense of belonging. And once you feel it, nothing nothing can shake you.
Yeah. And how different life must be now compared to when you were a kid and then, growing up, and then even when you made that decision to go to Japan and being there in the early days sounds like, yeah, that sense of belonging, you were really trying to figure that out
Yeah.
and you had to look inside.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting, isn't it? The
Mm.
sense of belonging does come from within. I truly believe that. When
Mm.
we rely on others, I don't know, it doesn't usually work well, does it?
Yeah, because it's like it's a validation, right? You want people to validate you, but
Mm,
you have no control over what they think and what they feel and how they'll react. And it was always so scary. I was so scared that they would use whatever they know about me against me. But then now I'm like,
right.
you can't, because I love who I am. I accept myself for who I
Mm,
am, and so you can say whatever you want. Yeah, sometimes I'll get like a little butthurt, but that is what it is. It's your reaction to me. It's not anything to do with me. That was a
yeah.
very yeah, that was a big learning, right?
Yeah. So how did you get to that point? Like, did you have someone guide you to do that inner work, or did you just figure it out yourself? How did you get here?
A lot of trial and error.
I can
Absolutely.
relate.
It took a long time. It definitely took a long time, and I want to say it had to do a lot with I was lucky. I met someone who really accepted me for who I was in a way. Like, yes, there so I had my sense of belonging. I was getting close to, like, I think I was already on that path because I was feeling so much of the hurt that I was getting with people leaving, I did meet someone, and my ex, and she was very, she accepted me for who I was, and I was like, great, great, great. But what I had learned was my reaction to her and learning to accept her helped me learn how to accept myself. It was a very strange, slow, kind of sudden transformation, I think. I was not intending to like find a sense of belonging really. It was almost like indirect bonus from the relationship that I had with her,
Right.
where she was very accepting of the parts that I really didn't like about myself. And she kept
Mm.
telling me like it's fine the way you are. And I'm like, no, it's not, because I had a very strict idea of what was right and what was wrong. And seeing her and my reactions to her, I also had a lot of ideas of what was right and what was wrong. And then we worked through a lot of that because we would argue like crazy. But understanding like a person is who they are because of who they are. Like you just accept them and you love them for who they are. And it was a very chaotic relationship, to be honest. But
Yeah.
from that experience, I realized how much acceptance can really transform someone. Through the relationship that we had, I think we had a lot of, well, I had a lot of opportunities to really see how my reactions to her and how my acceptance of her quirks and her things that I at first did not see as good, and I judged, and I was like, I don't like this part about you and blah blah blah. I want you to change. I was not a really good person at the beginning. but, but after I learned, like, people are who they are and it's okay, and just accept it, the relationship completely transformed. And then I was like, wait, let me let me apply that to myself and let's see what that would be like.
Mm.
And then it completely changed the way I saw life. I saw myself, the way I reacted to things. I was just like, you know what? It is what she said. It's okay that I feel this way. It's okay that I have these quote unquote imperfections, but they're me.
Right.
And that makes me me. I don't know. I like my little quirks. Every now and then I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't. But
Learning to love yourself is, I don't know, it's an ongoing journey for me, but I think
it's hard, especially for
yeah.
people in our community where
Mhm.
I mean, we have so many messages from outside. I mean, it's changing
Mm.
now, but there is still a lot of shame. I dealt a lot
Yeah.
with shame when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up because I think that's something most of us in the LGBTQI plus community have experienced, this concept of shame. And it sounds like you were becoming aware of your sexuality younger. So, what role did shame play there as you were figuring things out?
I think it was just it goes back to like I just thought there was something really wrong with me. And if I tried hard enough, I could somehow not pray the gay away because I'm not religious or anything, but I really thought that if I worked hard enough, I could just be normal. The
Mm,
shame was just because there was no representation at all. I mean, back in those days, when nowadays we have a lot of people are open and there's a lot of talk and a lot of dialogue about this. But back, when I was a kid, I think the biggest news was when like Angelina Jolie came out as bisexual. And I was like,
yeah.
oh wow, like there's somebody who's kind of like me. But you see, there
Yep.
were no lesbians. There were only bisexuals. And I'm like, so maybe that's
Mm,
what I am. Maybe I like guys and girls, right? Maybe it's I don't know. But she
mm,
doesn't look like me, and she's a celebrity.
mm,
She's allowed. I'm just this little like Asian kid who lives in America. I don't think I'm allowed. And I remember when that news came out, I remember exactly. I was having noodles with my mom and my brother. And my mom was talking about that because she was reading the newspaper. And she was like,
uh,
and she had made a comment. She was like, oh my God, this is so gross. And I was like, and when I heard that, I don't know if she said gross, but she was like, oh, what a shock. Like, oh my gosh, like that's so irregular or something like that. I just said some
yeah.
word. I don't really know the direct translation, but it was the word. It was very negative, and I felt absolutely terrified when I heard that. Because
Yeah.
here I was saying, "Oh, wow, like, hey, look, there's somebody who's kinda sort of, like, feeling things that I feel, but I feel them much more than she does." Because I never was really attracted to guys. So when I heard that, that's where the shame, like, just I already felt something was weird, but then now I
Yeah.
heard it, and from someone who I really, who was I wanted to be loved unconditionally, and then I feared that if she ever found out, I would lose that love.
Mm.
And so there was that shame of, like, there's something wrong with me. And, of course, being an Asian kid, you're supposed to be good at math. I sucked at math, so already there I would have shame about being like I wasn't, like, the right kind of Asian either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was piled upon, and just I became super, super, terrified and scared of any, behaviors that would be seen as not feminine. And
Mm.
and so not I tried to really, like, not over feminize. I would never did anything too crazy, but just in other areas, I tried to be as good as possible.
Mm.
I tried to be as quiet and as, like, domesticated as possible. I tried to be very, very like, I don't wanna stand out, I don't wanna cause trouble. It was just, and it was because I was so ashamed of who I was. I was afraid to
Mm.
dress the way I wanted to dress. I was afraid of walking the way I wanted to walk. I remember my mom
Oh.
being quite, picky about the way I walked, because I walked too bulky, I guess.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, the words that I would say, I was so scared. Just everything. I was just ashamed of everything that was me, and it was
Mm.
just inauthentic. It was absolutely inauthentic, and I always had the fear. I remember as a kid, fear and anger was like they were primary emotions that I felt. Fear of being found out by anybody, or fear of anybody saying anything or making any comments about the way I dressed, the way I spoke, the way I looked, whatever.
Mhm.
Because I was trying so hard to look this part
Yeah.
and play this part as best as I could. And if anybody said anything, it meant that I had failed. It meant that they
Mhm.
found me out. And I was
Yeah.
always so angry about because it's exhausting. It's so exhausting, right? To play this part of you, to put and suppress this part of you that is so big.
Mm.
And so I feel like, a lot of my childhood, a lot of my, like, that those great years, those high school years, I can't remember a lot of it. Like, it was just so dark. Absolutely dark.
Yeah.
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 And, it was hard. So when I think I maybe came to Japan out of desperation as well. Just I needed
Mm.
to breathe. I needed to get my head up for air, I had to come up for air for a bit before I dove back down to, like, live the heterosexual life.
Did you feel that that was the only option, living that heteronormative
I
life?
did. I really
Mm.
did. Yeah, I didn't think I never ever thought that I would ever be able to come out or to be with somebody that I truly wanted to be with. There were no other options. It's almost like I had a conversation with a friend who recently, in the recent years, discovered that she was bisexual. And then I was like, because I kind of knew myself quite early on, so I never had a conversation with someone who came out quite later in life. She was
Mhm.
saying, like, the thing is, I never knew it was possible to have, to be attracted to women. And I was like, I never knew there was an option not to, like,
Yeah.
But it felt kind of like that, like, but I felt like that when I was young. I just thought, there's you don't realize what other options there are until you have the safe space to explore, and I didn't have that
Right,
safe
right.
space in America.
Mm.
Strangely, I come to a very conservative country, and I discovered that it's
Yeah, I
okay.
was gonna say that. It's not what I would have expected, but
Mm,
what you were saying about, going to a different country, you knew no one. It's kinda like starting from scratch. You're
yeah,
rebuilding who you are, or I imagine that's kind of what it was
yeah,
like.
it was, and so it's actually really nice, like, I just felt like, well, I it's like a blank canvas, and I have the ability to do whatever I
Yes.
want now, and it's okay because, and I think that's the other thing. I only had, at first, I was just, I promised my mom, I'll be back in 2 years. Just give me 2 years.
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
it's 2 years. Who the heck? Whatever. I can do whatever. No one's going to remember me anyways. So, well, now I'm like, I've been here for a long time, so I have to be careful. But that was like when I knew there was a quote unquote timeline, and then I was like, what is there to lose? And that's kind of the
Mm.
mindset that I had that has been helping me throughout my whole life. Whenever I'm scared to do something, is what is there to lose? I mean, it's, you only live once, right? But really,
Mm.
what is there to lose? Nothing. Like, it's so much worse in your mind. We have, or at least I do. I catastrophize so well
Oh,
in my
yeah.
mind, but then that holds you back from living the life that you really want. So now I'm just like, every time something scares me, I'm just like, well, let's just go. Just do it. Who knows? Because
Yeah.
things are always better than however you think. They will always be better than what you think.
Yeah. I definitely jump to the worst possible
Yeah,
scenario when I'm scared of something. It's like the end of the world. Like, what if this happens?
exactly.
And you step back and you're like, really?
Yeah,
Like, is that likely? And actually, even if things did go wrong, okay, well, what would you do? It's like, well, I could go back and I'd be
yeah,
all right. I could do this.
yeah,
Usually it's going to be okay.
yeah,
We're very good at talking ourselves out of things that actually could make
exactly.
us really
We're a
happy.
lot more resourceful than we actually think. And there's people in our
Yeah.
lives that are here to help as well. You just need to speak up and ask. That's something that
Mm.
was quite difficult as well, because we grow up a little bit distrusting sometimes.
Yeah. So I assume you've been back to the US to visit family
Yes.
since you've been in Japan.
Yep.
What has that been like? When you hadn't been in Japan too long, the first visit back home, what was that like? Because I imagine you'd become a bit of a different person.
Yeah. I was a lot more confident, actually, surprisingly. I remember the first time I went back, I had chopped my hair off. and I
Yeah, yeah.
and just that act of cutting my hair was almost like a coming out in a way for me. I've always
Yeah.
had really, actually, surprisingly, I had always had really long hair, and my mom
Wow.
actually, she never had let me cut my hair, but I was like, you can't
Mm.
control me now. I'm thousands of miles away. I can chop it all off. So I came back a little bit more confident in myself, because in a way I think Japan helps also because I'm an English speaker. Japan
Right.
really likes English, and they're like, "Oh my god, wow!" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, okay, this is like, it's so normal for me. This is the only language. I mean, this is the only language that I could speak very very well. Actually, surprisingly, I lost all my Chinese,
Mm.
so that kind of made me feel like, okay, there's something that people like about me here, and
Mhm.
that started to help me see myself in a different light, because I was always very down on myself. I was the master of self-deprivation, not and deprecation. I mean, I came back a little more confident of who I was, but there was still, I was still not out the first year or two when I was in Japan, but I was starting
Mm.
to explore it a little more. I had actually
Right.
had my first same-sex relationship around that time, so I knew kind of like, "Oh, okay, all right, like, I've tried it out now. I think I'm kinda gay, but okay." But I explored it, and now that I've actually explored it instead of just thought about it in America, because 'cause I've never dated anybody in America, I was getting a little more acquainted with myself. Coming back to America, I was still, but it was funny because when I know, in that sense, I shrank again when I came here,
Right.
because of the memories I had. Because I came back maybe, I think, the first year, either the first or the second year, but I hadn't expanded enough out in Japan and felt comfortable in my expansion before I went back. So when I went back, I kind of, oh, this is who I was. I still have, these are still memories of people who have ideas of who I was, and my friends. They still have an image of me that was still quite close to, not that much time has passed yet. So let me go
Mhm.
back to what they remember, except with the short hair, which they started questioning. And I was like, okay, well,
Yeah.
and I kind of would tell them like a little bit about my life in Japan. And that relationship that I had was a part of the life that I had in Japan. So there was a little bit more expansion than from what I used to be, but I did go back subconsciously.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I was like, oh.
Yeah. So what's it like now when you go back home?
The most recent time I went back, it was absolutely amazing. I've never had such a great trip back. And I think
Mm.
it's all the work that I've done. I've done a lot of inner work the last year, a lot of shadow work, and coming really truly to accepting all those really, working through those little negative parts that I really still didn't like, and understanding a lot of the traumas that working through all the traumas that I had. I went back and I was completely transformed in a way. Like I felt like this is truly who I am. This is who I've worked so hard on making and understanding myself. And I went back. There was no expansion. There was no whatever what's the word of expansion? Shrinking. And I was comfortable because I was like,
Wow.
this is me. And what's even amazing is also America has changed a lot. And
Mm.
since before, like since a while, I've come out to my family. My mother is very, she's accepting of me. My brother knows, everybody knows. I am who I am. And I come out here, I go out there, and I just experienced the world as I experienced America as who I truly am. And it was wonderful. The lady who I was on the airplane with, we chatted the whole entire flight. It was like a 12, 13-hour flight. She's in the LGBTQ
Wow.
community. And I was like, wow, what are the, what are the chances?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
just like, let me just tell everybody, like, let's talk. I want to talk. I want to know. I want to show you who I am. I want you to show me who
Mm.
you are. That would never have happened like in the States.
No.
That would have never happened when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was like, don't ask me anything about myself. I'm not going to ask you anything, so you don't ask me anything. I don't really
Right.
want to know you because I'm scared that you'll want to know me. And I'm scared of letting you know who I am. But I went back and I was like, here I am. Exactly. Like this is it. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
It was
How
so it
liberating.
was liberating. There we go. That's the word. Absolutely liberating.
So I got to ask the stereotypical question. What's your coming out story? I feel like this question makes me roll my eyes a little bit. I don't know if you would agree, but I feel like there's not just one coming out. It's this ongoing thing, right? But talk me through it. Like, when did you come out to your family? Was it different to when you came out to friends, or was it just kind of you didn't say anything and they figured it out?
Yeah. I mean, wow. I think I did my first coming out to a friend when I was in high school.
Mm,
It was, or it was kind of like I spoke it out loud for the first time. And I'm a big believer of once you say it out, it becomes true. And so for
right.
the longest time, I didn't wanna say anything to anybody. I had a best friend in high school, and I actually had a crush on her. But I was also like, she was the only person I really, like, kinda told stuff to, like, just all my other stuff besides being gay. But I remember just I told her one day, like, "I think I might be attracted to girls." And she gave me this look, and I will never forget the look, and it scared me because it wasn't a very
Mm,
accepting look. It was kinda like, "Are you sure? Like, really?
mm.
Oh, but nobody else is like that." And then I remember the next day going to school really early and finding her, and she was talking to a boyfriend. I was like, "I need to talk to you right now." And she's like, "Well, what is it?" I was like, "You know what I said yesterday? I don't think it's true. It was just I don't know, it was a fluke." Like I just and I remember just retracting everything I said, and it felt so
Wow.
uncomfortable. And I was just like, "Okay, well, I tried it out, and the reaction I got was not good, so let me go back in." That was my first coming out
Mhm.
to a friend. After that, it's been a little bit better because I was a little bit more, careful with the people I came out to. I came out
Yeah.
the next person I
Yes.
think I came out to was to a gay guy that I met in university who was so flamboyantly gay. And like the moment I was like, "Oh my god, hey, I think we're like on the same page here." And he's like, "Yeah, I think so." He's like giving off a lot of like gay vibes. I was like, "Really?" So that helped, like having somebody in the community who's already very like open to himself. That was that. And then that he helped me really navigate how to like, his friends and how to navigate coming out to friends. I came out to my mom actually when I was in Japan. I was dating the second person, somebody who I felt absolutely in love with, like first love kind of situation.
Mhm.
Heard wedding bells and everything. I planned my whole life with this person, and it was through Skype. because I was terrified to tell my
Mm,
mother in person. I never thought I would ever come out to her. Like, the story about like
yeah.
just going back and being straight. I never, ever, ever, ever planned on coming out to her. I just thought, I was with this person. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this person. I don't know how that's ever going to pan out if I never came out to her, but I'll figure out a way eventually. And I thought
Yeah.
maybe we'll
Yeah.
just be together once all our parents passed away. Like that was kind of the thought that I
Oh
had.
my god. Yeah.
Don't say anything. But I was on a call with my mom, and we always kept in touch with each other through Skype. And just one day, she was a little bit irritated because I was always at her house and always with her
Right.
family, and she was kind of like, why are you always there? And I'm like, oh, well, we're just really close. And she's like, well, are you like dating her? Like just as kind of like a comment, a little joke. So when she asked that, like as a joke, I just started sobbing. And my mom freaked out. She's like, what's
Mm,
wrong with you? And I couldn't say anything. I just shook I just nodded my head. And then she's like, what? And I was like, yes, I'm dating her. And she's like, "Ah," and it's just like an explosion of like emotions for both of our sides, and it was chaotic and
mm,
horrible, and it was just I never talked back to my mother because as a good daughter you're not supposed to talk back to your parents, but that was the first time ever I really really like kind of talked back to her. I was like, I'm happy, and she's like, you
right.
don't look happy, because I'm like bawling like snot everywhere. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Like, you don't look happy, but I was like, I'm not happy because of the way that you're reacting right now, because this is something I wanted to share with you. I just felt like, I feel so unaccepted, blah, 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 blah. It was a huge argument, and we lost contact for about a year or two. Like, it was just, sh
Wow.
yeah, I'd call her every once in a while, I tried to, like, talk, and then it would always end up in tears and somebody screaming. Um, so, yeah, I lost contact with my mom for a while, and I was just like, "Well, I guess this is I don't know." Like, I mean, my family is my mom, my brother, and my sister. And, we're this little small unit, and my mom was somebody who I really hung on to, like, I really respected, I really loved. And when I thought I lost that contact, it was horrible. It was really, really difficult for me. But I also said, like, I don't think I can go back living a life that is not me. I don't feel comfortable anymore. Once I came out, I can't go back in. Like, I really just don't feel comfortable.
Right.
Surprisingly, after the silence, she called me one day and she's like, "I'm sorry."
Wow.
And I got really, I was just like, "Well, about what?" And she's like, I'm sorry it took me so long. But it was a shock when you told me, and I needed time to get used to everything. And my timing was really off. She's going through a health scare, and so I just kind of did not take into consideration her situation.
Mhm.
But she said, like, I'm sorry, it just really took time. She's like, I also didn't know how to deal with it because I don't know, of course, the misrepresentation or the lack of representation. It's like I don't know, I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to deal with this. But you know what? As long as you are happy, that's all I truly want. And I was scared because I don't know what the future would look like for you. I can't help you. I don't know. I can't protect you. And I'm like, I there's a part of me that says I don't need protection, but at the same time, I was like, for you to say that, like it was so beautiful. I felt
Yeah.
finally like she was seeing me as who I was, and the relationship I have with her now is better than anything I've ever had with her. I
Mm.
mean, I've always been the good kid, but I never
Yeah.
told her anything. And she finally, like, we talked a lot, and she's like, "I finally realized why you never told me anything about yourself." Like, even when we argued, she's like, "You never talked back to me." And I was like, "I'm just sca I mean, first of all, I'm terrified of you, but I was just scared of whatever I said, if anything I said would give you any sense of any hint that I was
Right.
different from what you expected." And now I can talk to her about anything, and our relationship is very, very good now. So that was my coming out.
Mm.
It was very dramatic.
Yeah. And it's so different for everybody, I think.
Absolutely.
It's a really personal journey. It sort of makes me think of my coming out
Mm.
journey, I
Ooh, do share.
realized much later. Yeah, it's fun, right? Talking to people, you're like, oh, tell me yours. Yeah, I realized my sexuality later in life. So I was in my, how old was I? Oh, I think, was I 20 yet? I don't know. Anyway, 19, 20, around, actually, it might have been a bit after, around 20 anyway.
Mhm.
And I told one friend, he was bisexual, so I felt safe. And I'm like, but I still didn't fully commit to it. I'm like, I'm 90% sure that I'm gay. That's what I said to him. And then I just kind of didn't talk to anyone about it for years. And then I started my career as a teacher in a small town. Small town, right? Couple of thousand people. But what do you know? Two teachers there are lesbians and they're a couple. And, you know, as soon as I saw them, I just knew, right? I was like, oh, this is exciting. Like, I just got really excited. And one of them dressed like me. And I was like, oh my God, you know, this is really cool. And I became really close friends with them. And one night we were out somewhere. I think we were at a pub or something. It was one of their birthdays. And of course, they had lots of friends in the queer community. So I'm surrounded by these people who are really confident in their sexuality. I still hadn't come out. But my teacher friends had suspected for a while, right? And how did it happen? One of their friends at the table said to me, oh, which side of the girlfriend-boyfriend fence do you sit? And I'm a really bad liar. And I just went, oh, the girlfriend side. And I'm like, bright red. And they were just like, yeah, whatever, like, no big deal, cool. And I'm freaking out. This whole table of people, maybe 20 people who most of them I didn't know, they knew. And my mum didn't know. My dad wasn't alive at the time, but my mum, who I was very close with, she didn't know. And I just felt sick at the thought of it. Knots in my stomach. And so I think maybe a couple of weeks had passed. And I'm like, I need to tell my mum and I need to tell her in person. So I chucked a sickie at work. I flew down to see mum for a few days and my sister, who's 10 years younger. And I said, let's go for a walk. I'm like, how am I going to tell them? I'm like, I don't want to look them in the eye. So we're walking and this walk went on and on. It was probably more than an hour. And I'm like, okay, come on, you can do it. And I see this rainbow. I'm like, oh, fuck, the universe is telling me, like, come on, get on with it. There's a fucking rainbow. Anyway, so I stopped walking. I grabbed my mum and my sister by the hands. I'm getting teary. I'm like, I have something to tell you. And they're getting worried, right? Why are you stopping? Why are you crying? Like, are you sick? And I just said, I'm gay, and I burst into tears. And my sister just clung onto me, gave me the biggest hug. I felt so accepted. And mum was just standing there frozen. And she said, oh, well, that's personal. That's your choice. And I thought, oh, shit, I shouldn't have told her. Like, oh my God. I just felt, you know, she wasn't mean, but the words felt so cold. I'm like, number one, it's not a choice. And okay, it's kind of personal, but you're someone who's really important to me. And I wanted to share something that is a big part of me. So I felt pretty rejected. And mum and I, you know, would talk regularly, but it was the topic we never spoke about. So it was just like the elephant in the room. Because I feel like once you tell someone, you expect to be able to talk about these things. Well, that's what I thought. And then I got my first girlfriend. And I'm like, I have to tell mum. Like that, we just had such a strong connection, even though she clearly hadn't come to terms yet with my sexuality. I'm like, I have to tell mum. I don't want to be a liar. And she just sort of went, oh, yeah, okay. And then again, my girlfriend became the elephant in the room. Like I was with, you know, my girlfriend for 8 years. And for the first couple of years, yeah, just never asked, oh, how are you two doing? Or how's so-and-so? And one day I said, Mum, what the fuck? What is going on? I'm like, I see a future with this woman and I love you, but if you can't accept who I am and accept her into your life, then we've got a problem. Like you need to make a choice. And I can't remember if I got a reply from her, but I called her up and I said, "Look, I actually don't know how you feel
Mm,
about this whole situation. You haven't said anything." And it was our first open conversation. She's like, "Well, I've thought about how I won't be a grandma, and that makes me really sad."
mm.
And it just hit me in the heart, and I thought, "Wow, she's actually being honest. I would much rather that than the
Right.
coldness she'd been giving me." And then I said, "Well, I can still have kids. It's a bit more difficult, but you might be a grandma one day." So that kinda started the open dialogue, and it took time,
Mm,
and she met my girlfriend for the first time, and it wasn't too horrible. I thought she'd be absolutely a meanie, but she was actually really nice,
mm.
and full acceptance came because my mum's not alive anymore, but when she
Sorry.
was very sick and dying, my well, we're not together anymore, but my fiancé at the time was with me, and one of the nurses was in the room because we were in palliative care. Mum's in the bed, it's me and my fiancé, and one of the nurses said, "Oh, is that your sister?"
Mm,
Which, don't get me started
mm.
on that. Anyway, my mum said, "No, that's my daughter-in-law."
Oh,
And I just went, "Oh my god." Like, it's making me teary thinking about it, but I was like, "Wow, she fully accepts." Like, I just felt so loved and so accepted, and it's amazing how much of an impact it has to feel fully accepted. It is so validating, and as much as we say that we shouldn't put our self-worth or so much importance in what others think, it it does matter to me, so it
it
meant a lot.
does. It does, especially from the
Yeah.
people who we like, our family. I think that's one. Like I've always that's one I feel like, that's the exception to the rule.
Yeah, right. It's a tricky one, and
Mm,
I empathize with people who, haven't been able to get to that stage with their family. For
mm.
some people, unfortunately, they aren't accepted by their family, and that just breaks my heart, and I wish everybody could get that acceptance, but it's not the truth for some people.
Yeah. It's really, really hard to is in that sense, like I guess you and I have been lucky to have people who
Mm,
who accept us. When I see a lot of, you know, our brothers and sisters in that sense, like who don't have that,
mm.
it's then I'm like, you know what, let me be I know I'm not a replacement, but let me be the person who will
Right.
validate your experience and you as who you are because you need not you need, but like I want to give that to you. It's just it gives you such a it really changes a lot, I think. Like when my
I
mother
agree.
accepted and when my family was very accepting it just completely changed this dialogue that I had within myself about who I was as well.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's nice to share. I feel like it's not something I get to talk about often.
Mm.
A lot of my friends are straight.
It's a different
They can never understand what that's like.
when you tell another, like, gay person about it, you're like, "Oh, okay." Like, there's something. "Oh, okay, we're"
It's this instant
Yeah.
connection, yeah, but I back to what I was saying before, and your coming out story, there was more than one, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't just, "Oh, this big event, everybody knew I'm cool, everything's fine." Like, it's constant, and in many circumstances, I'm not transparent with who I am because I
Mm.
don't feel safe or I'm unsure how people are gonna react,
Yeah.
and I guess that's part of our existence now.
Yeah.
It isn't safe in all contexts to be
Yeah.
fully transparent.
That's true. It is a little bit scary, I think, in that sense. Like Japan, they're quite like it. I came to a place that is exactly the way that It's surprising how open I am here. It's just the same as in
Yeah.
the states. There's no representation really. And speaking of people who are not able to come out, it's constant. I've met more closed, closeted people here than I have open people.
Right.
And it's sad. Uh,
Yeah.
but I mean, in a sense, I'm safer. I feel safer here. I don't think I would be as open as I am here than I would be in
Mm.
the States, actually, and surprising.
Yeah.
Just because I don't
Yeah.
know, like, it's accepting in the States, like, we have the dialogue, it's open, like, you see it more, you see marriage is okay, you see people holding hands and stuff, but at the same time, I'm still a little bit scared because people react quite big in the States. Maybe the worst I'd get
Right.
would be little stares and be like, and then look away, but that's it. Because,
Yeah.
they don't say anything, they don't do anything, so I don't,
Right, right.
at least not to your face, right? So here, at least. So
Mm.
I feel a
Mm.
little, I understand, like, sometimes it's we have to be safe. And that's, it sucks that we have to think that that's that extra thing, but that we have to think about. But people in the queer community, we're used to it. We're used to like,
Right. And I think that community piece is so important.
mhm,
It's almost like choosing your family, you're
yeah,
choosing the people to be around and that it's safe
mhm,
to actually be yourself.
mhm.
Because I think it's really important to try and find that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge change. It's a very big change. I think, I recently moved, actually, and, I've lived 14 years in the west of Japan, and my community is there, my friends are there, my support group is there.
Mhm.
I moved to the east of Japan, so near Tokyo now, and I'm looking for my new community, and I feel the difference when there's not,
Mm.
when I don't have that community. It's a little bit, mm, a little scary, um, but
Yeah.
it makes a difference. And even though I have like the one or two people that I found here, I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah, you just cling to them.
you're my friends, like, you understand me. And it's a difference between, like, it's not saying that I don't have friends, but like, there's a difference
Mm.
with, like, straight friends and who people who are in my, in the LGBTQ group. Then it's like, you understand. I don't even need, like, it's kind of like that coming out story that we just had. Like, there's
Yeah.
a there's something that binds us in a way. Like, your experience is definitely different from my experience, but there is that, like, every time I hear like a coming out story, there's a part of my heart that I'm like,
Mm.
oh, it rings so true, and it's so close, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, I just want to, like, embrace
Yeah.
you. You know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
I feel
don't,
the same.
I don't feel that really with my straighter friends. My straight friends. It's just like, it's a story
Yeah.
for them, and they're like, oh,
Yeah, it's like,
that's
"How did you come out and tell everybody you had a boyfriend?"
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So community building.
yeah. It makes me think maybe a year ago, 18 months ago, I made some friends with neighbors where I was living at the time,
Mhm.
lesbian couple. They were just awesome, and we both had a puppy at the time, similar age, and, we became friends, and, they were great, and my partner at the time was stalking them on Instagram, as you do.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Rosie, come here." I'm like, "What? What's wrong?" She's like, "I think so and so's transgender." And I went, "Oh," like, I was like, "Why? What? Why? Like, are you concerned about this?" And I think she was just like, "Whoa, I've met one in the wild," kind of thing, which is awful. Like, but I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I decided to stalk on the Instagram, and she had shared her transitioning journey on Instagram. It was
Oh, that's
amazing, since
beautiful.
she started, hormone therapy, and it brought me to tears, and I said to my partner, "I need to say something," and she said, "You can't do that." Like, "No." And I said, "No, that's we can't, it's not hush hush. Like, no, I want to say something." And I sent a message and said, "I just wanna say, I think you're awesome, and the fact you're showing it online is amazing, and just thank you for being so open
Mm,
about
mm,
it."
mm.
And she was like, "I don't have words, but thank you." Yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
I just felt, "Oh, wow, how," it's brave and it's courageous to come out,
Mhm,
and to be so open about it
mhm.
is, to me, it's just like, "Wow, I wish I was that brave," kind of thing. It's this big scary thing.
Mhm.
It still kind of is for me sometimes coming out to people. I'm
Yeah.
just like, "Yeah, I'd rather not." It's just I don't wanna go there.
Yeah, it's sometimes you pick and choose. Like, again, like,
Right.
you don't know how people react, and sometimes it's not worth like the hassle of like,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah, whatever, you can think what you think.
Yeah, I'll go to the shop and they go, "Oh, yeah, you're getting that for hubby."
Yeah,
And I'll just go,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
no."
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, "Sure, yeah, whatever, like, let's end this conversation.
yeah,
I don't wanna have to explain myself
yeah.
to you."
And we don't need to explain ourselves to anybody that we don't want to,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
a privilege to know us.
Yeah,
Know us
exactly.
for of who we are, so it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, and I think we deserve to have the right to pick and choose who we share that with.
Oh goodness,
It's a
yeah.
pretty intimate thing to share.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I there was okay, I this is like a random, but yeah, sometimes people expect a lot from you then. They're like, "Well, now share all your
Mm.
story." And I'm like, "No." Like, why do I have to, like, you're not somebody I feel very comfortable sharing everything to.
No.
But they're like, "Well, you're out then. You share, right? Put on Instagram." I'm like, "Yes, but that is the part that I choose to share, and that's what you get." Like, what I don't need to tell you exactly like what my relationships are like right now, and I'm like, they're my business, right?
No.
And it's me and the other person as well. So yeah, calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's some really intimate questions
yeah,
that come out that I don't think people would ever ask
yeah,
to a straight person.
yeah.
Like, "Oh, how did 2 girls have sex? Oh, when was your first
Oh,
time? Oh,
yeah.
have you had sex with a man? Oh, how do you know?" Excuse me?
I might again pick and choose who you want to say it to, but sometimes I'm like, what an odd question to ask someone who you've just like kind of met.
Right. Boundaries,
Right.
people.
Yes, yes, it's exactly.
I wanna jump now. Like, this conversation has been awesome, but let's talk about, 'cause you're an empowerment and joy coach.
Mhm.
How did you get to that? Like, because obviously you weren't always a coach, so what happened?
Yeah. Well, I got into coaching because of the relationship that I was in the previous. It was a 6-year relationship. It was quite the chaotic relationship. And a
Mm,
part of learning how to accept my partner was part of accepting myself. I did not accept myself. I was so, I realized a lot of the stuff that was going on was a lot of projection that I was projecting toward things that I didn't like about myself. We got to a really, really horrible point in our relationship, and I was like, what the heck am I doing here? I
mm,
you know the relationship itself took, it was tough, and I was also in a very bad space. I checked myself into a what they call a mental clinic here. It sounds really bad, but it's just therapy. They started giving me pills because that's how they deal with mental issues in Japan, which I'm not a very big fan of. They gave me pills,
mm,
and I'm like, that's not what would help me actually. And then so I started doing counseling
yeah,
with an English speaker, and she was just
mhm,
telling me about, well, we were working through mindset and like mindfulness and things like that, and anger management. I had a lot of anger, but it was just a
I
lot
can
of,
relate to that.
right. It's a lot of childhood trauma and things that don't get released, so it builds up into this volcanic eruption. And she, on our last session, she's like, "Have you ever thought about coaching?" And I was like, "What's that?" And then so that was my introduction to
Mhm,
coaching because all I ever knew was
mm,
therapy. And I was like,
right.
"Okay, let me check this out." And yeah, that was my introduction to coaching. I found Jay Shetty, beautiful eyes, very good looking guy,
Yes.
right? And so
Yeah, and voice, yeah.
yes, yes, and yeah, I mean, watching it, learning it, like seeing another different side of how to think was a big had a huge impact. And that, applying a lot of the things that I learned from those videos that I watched and things like that really helped in my relationship. I was like, this shit's real. Like, this shit's good. It works. Because my relationship got
Yeah.
like much, much better from
Mhm,
then. And in terms of like communication and being able to, listen and just accept things as they
mhm.
are. Yeah, so I was like, "This is really, really good, like, this shit, how do people, like, survive not knowing this stuff?" Like, I don't know
Right.
how I ever lived without knowing all the things that I know now. And so I got really interested in coaching, and so I decided, "Yeah, let's do this, I wanna learn more." And so I got certified, I'm a certified professional coach now. And then the empowerment and the joy part was just, like, what was important to me in my life was just I wanted somebody to encourage me to be who I am and to find
Yeah.
joy in life, because I lived, it was darkness for such a long time. I did not know joy for a long, long time, and I didn't allow myself
Mm.
to know joy. We live in that culture, especially living in Japan, like it's hustle, hustle, hustle. It's go, go, go. It's never like, it's
Mm.
nothing about joy. And I think being here has helped me really see what it is that I really need, and it's joy. For me, joy is a
Right.
huge value, and I love having fun and bringing joy to people's lives, and having joy it's a reciprocated thing. Like you bring joy, you
Yes.
give joy, you take it, give and take kind of situation, and joy
Mm.
makes the world go round and round. And it's a lot of also coming to yourself, like me being more and more open to who I was, being more accepting of who I was, and having fun with who I am. Just that in itself was transformative for me. So I'm like listening to a lot of the people who I come in contact with. I'm also a
Mm.
teacher. I teach English in Japan. And so a lot of the people I listen to, I hear their life story through our lessons, and I'm like, you need more joy in your life. Like, and
Yeah.
and it's not like going out and having fun, but you need to. I feel like a lot of us don't know how to have fun being who we are. And
Yes.
a lot of people have not explored what that looks like. And they're just we're so caught up, especially in this day and age. It's so much. You got to go to the right school, you have to get the right job, you have to marry the right person, you have to have this much money, you have to buy this kind of house. So much expectation, and we don't have time to be with ourselves and know, do we really truly want this? Because that was my life. I just lived the life that people told me. It's the straight life, that we were supposed to have this many kids and blah 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 blah. Like, we never questioned it. But the moment you sit down and you have that quiet moment with yourself and you think, do I truly want this? A lot of times, it shocked me when I realized I don't want it. And I think it
Yeah.
comes to a shock for many people when they realize I don't truly wanna work where I wanna work. I don't truly wanna, like, be married to this person. Why did I get
Mm.
married? Because everybody told me I had to get married. We have that timeline, especially as women.
Yeah.
By this time you should be married, you should have this many kids, you should have this house, and for a long time, I felt as I was living here longer and I was not living the I was I'm looking at my friends. I don't have the typical life that they have. They're getting married, they're buying their first house, they're having their first kids and blah, blah, and I'm like,
Right.
I'm very gay. No. It doesn't look exactly like that, and there was a fear. I was like, "Wait, am I doing something?" And again, that old feeling of like, "Am I doing something wrong? Is something wrong with me?" But then I'm
Yes.
like, "No. I'm living my life the way that I wanna live." I'm here, I'm having fun, and this is what I feel is joyful, and I don't need to compare myself
Right.
because I used to compare myself a lot to people,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And we have a lot of that issue. Yeah, and just empowering yourself and letting yourself know that the way that you wanna live your life, the way that you experience your life, that is completely fine, and just be happy with the
Yeah.
life that you chose, because you really just have one life, and what's the point if you're on your deathbed and you think back and you're like, "Crap, I shouldn't have done this, this, this." That how unfortunate is
Right.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't live for other people.
Mm.
I think we deserve to live a joyful life
Yes.
and a life that we want.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of listeners of this podcast, because it's called The Pursuit of Freedom, so a lot of listeners are at that point. They know they want a change in life,
Mm.
but they can't even articulate what change they want or what is even wrong, but they just got this
Oh, the
feeling.
feeling. Yep.
What this is something I've been through, but what would you say to those people? Because it can be pretty overwhelming and feel pretty lonely.
Yeah. First of all, you're not alone. And
Mhm.
you're absolutely not alone, and it's to have that awareness it's a first step. It's not even like what exactly is wrong, but that kind of weird feeling that you have, that kind of uncomfortable feeling that you feel when you wake up and you're like that split second of like, this is not something's up.
Mm.
That
Mhm.
in itself is already really, really powerful. And you're not alone, and it's okay. It's okay to have that feeling. It's okay to feel like something's off. Sometimes it really is something that you would want to change. Sometimes it's not. It's okay. You don't need to change right now. You don't also
Right,
need to
right.
change if you don't want to change. But let's explore. Let's just think of possibilities.
Mm,
If you were to, we do a visioning exercise, like, close your eyes and imagine if you were living the life that you wanted. No strings attached, nothing. Like, don't think anything of that, what's realistic or not. Okay, think you have $1 billion right now, or like whatever. You're living the life that you want. What kind of feelings do you want? What do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel? What do you touch? What do you hear? Imagine that, and then, all right, put that onto what you have now. What changed? What was that thing? And from there, we could explore.
that word explore is key.
Mm,
We need to lead with curiosity. Let's just
curiosity.
play a little.
Yeah,
Let's figure it out. You're not going to know
nobody
what you
knows.
want straight away, and it's going to change, and
Mhm.
that's fine.
Yeah,
That's who we are as people. Things are going to change, but
exactly.
it's worth exploring
Yeah,
and going,
yeah,
okay, what could life be like?
exactly, exactly.
And then, okay, what could I do to get a little bit closer to that?
Mhm, mhm.
But it is a scary
It
time.
is. It is. And it's, but to know that you're not alone, to know that there,
Yeah.
if you have a coach, the coach is with you. You have friends, you
Right.
have people in your side, yeah,
Yeah.
by your side. You it's
Yeah.
scary when you have to do things alone, but you're not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Don't do it alone.
Mm.
For someone like me, I can be really stubborn. Like, I'm independent. I can do this myself. But
No one's questioning it,
right.
right?
Asking for help or letting other people in isn't a weakness.
Yeah.
And I've really come to learn the power of community. It's something I'm so passionate about. And, probably by the time this episode goes live, it'll be launched. But I'm setting up a community for women who are wanting change
Oh,
because let's not do this alone.
that's beautiful,
We're
yeah.
better together,
Yes.
seriously. And I remember you telling me when we first spoke, and I hope you don't mind me saying this,
Mm.
but you were saying it was a goal of yours to launch a podcast
Yeah.
for the LGBTQ
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
community,
It's happening.
which I think is awesome. Is that still something you wanna do?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm just getting
Yeah.
all my stuff ready. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I forgot
So
that I told you.
yeah.
Happy that you
Cat's out of the
I
bag
love it,
now.
I love it. Yes, yes, it's definitely happening. But no, I love that
Yeah.
you're doing that, and I would lo oh my gosh, I'm excited that you're creating a community. Yes, do it.
Oh,
We need.
we have to. Yeah, we do, and this podcast in itself is a community.
Yeah.
But I think, the thing with a podcast is sometimes it can be one way. Like, obviously, I've got a connection with you and you with me now, but the listeners, I don't get to hear
Mm.
the impact it's having on them.
Mhm.
Sometimes I do, sometimes I got messages, but I wanna be more connected, and that's
Yeah,
why I'm starting an online community where we can just
that's wonderful.
chat about whatever,
Yes,
right? There's no expectations.
that's so great.
So yeah, I can't wait
Yeah,
for your podcast to
I can't wait
launch,
for the
and
community to launch.
yeah, thank you. Like, let's keep
We're
this
we're keeping
going.
each other
Community is
accountable for
so
this.
worth it. Right. I'm onto you. I'm
Yeah,
onto you.
yeah.
It took me years to get off my butt and do this podcast, and then I just started and it just was like, "Oh, why did I take so long?"
That's kind of the thing though with everything. We
Yeah.
talk ourselves out, we talk ourselves out. When we do it, we're like, "Oh my god." But
Yep.
but it happened when it had to happen. And yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and it worked.
Yep.
It's fine. The universe has our back. They know. We've manifested it.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Let's be kind to ourselves. So
Mhm.
what that it took 5 years? Like, it's happening
Yeah,
and
and
it's
you're
our
making an impact.
journey
You're
and
making a huge impact, I'm sure. Like, oh gosh, it's amazing. And I'm just so happy like that you have this. You've brought this out into the world, this your podcast project, and now it's helping so many people, I'm sure. And even just me
I hope
talking to you,
so.
like I feel very like, what a wonderful way to wake up in the morning.
Oh, good. Yeah, I love these chats. Like, it's honestly a big part of why I do the podcast is probably pretty selfish. I just love it. I love hearing these stories. It's a privilege, it really is. And just my aim is to give people a voice. I don't want to
Beautiful.
speak for other people. I think it's important to just give people a platform to share their story on their terms.
Thank you. I am really happy. Thank you so much. Like, I think it's
Oh,
just
it's
wonderful
my
what you're
pleasure.
doing. And I'm just
Thank you.
I'm really excited for your community.
Oh, cool. Well, yep. It's happening. You can hold me to an account. I keep saying, yeah, it'll be launched. And I am hedging, I must say. But if the community's not out by the time this episode goes out, that's a problem.
I'll keep you in check.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
better together, definitely. Because
Yeah.
yes, we're strong, independent people, and we can go very far by ourselves. But why? The company's always
Yeah.
fun. The company's nice, and
I agree.
have fun on the way.
Right. It doesn't mean you can't have a bit of alone time,
Yeah,
right? But yeah.
yeah,
Final question.
yes.
I like to ask everybody this question. What does freedom mean to you?
Oh, freedom. Freedom means flight, I think. And the image that just popped up in my mind was flight. And in a way, soaring beyond, there's just empty skies. Being absolutely who you are without limits, without limiting yourself. The sky's the limit. I mean, space now, Being absolutely who you are and having no constraints and nothing that holds you back, nothing that the thoughts, the beliefs, the stories, anything that you tell yourself, those things are all gone. Just let yourself be who you are. That's what freedom
Mm,
is to me.
mm, that's beautiful.
Mm.
Mm.
How about you?
Jen, thank you
What is
so much. Oh,
sorry.
don't ask me that. No, I love it. I do love it when guests turn it on me. I'm like, damn it. And what I find interesting is the rare occasion where I am asked, my answer, it does change. I'm
Mm.
sort of, my concept of freedom is evolving. And as I hear people's answers, I'm like, ooh, hadn't thought of it like that. But I really like what you were saying about, tapping into who you are. I think that's a big part of it. Finding your truth has been a big thing for me. I got
Mhm.
a tattoo on my arm that says stay true
Ooh.
because when I stray from who I am, that's when the problems start coming
Mhm.
up. Things don't end well for me. And
Mm.
I start straying because I'm feeling these external pressures like this is what people expect from me. And I can't do it that way because no one else is.
Mm, mm.
But stuff that, you know, um, I've really, over the years, I question more and more these so-called rules in the way
Mhm.
things are done. Like, whose belief is it that you have to get married by this age and
Mhm.
have kids and
Mhm.
buy a house, and if you don't, then you're a failure?
Mhm.
Excuse me?
Mhm.
Whose belief is that? And we've just been conditioned to believe all these things. But when you go, hang on, is that my belief or is that someone else's?
Yes.
You have to undo that and ask the question, and who is that belief helping?
Mhm.
Not helping me. So freedom to me is being able to live a life with joy and feel safe to be my true self. That is the utmost freedom. I think they're two really important things for me.
Mm.
Joy, what's life is not, it's not, I was going to say it's not enjoyable without joy. Well, no shit, Einstein, but life is better when it's joyful. I
Yes.
want to do the things I enjoy. But to get there, I have to be very conscious with my decisions. So it's not just going to happen by accident.
Yeah. Oh,
So it's not a very articulate answer, but
no.
that is what I would say freedom is to
I
me.
love that. Thank you. I was like, I
Thank
gotta
you
know
for
what your thing
asking
is.
me.
I don't even know
Yeah.
what your answer is before we finish. I love that
Yeah.
though.
I should put together a compilation of everybody's answers because it blows my mind how different the answers are.
Mm.
It's such a big concept, but also so personal to everybody. Like, I should look up actually what the definition in the dictionary is because I'm sure it's nothing like what you and I said.
But it's fine. It's we make it what we make it, right? But that's the thing with life. Like
Yeah.
we make life. There's so many different ways to live life. So going back to kind of what you're saying, like who's to say that this is one way and whatever? We've nobody decided that. We just all kind of went along with it. But now it's your turn to write your own rule book, write your own guidebook, how to live life the rosy way.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want it to be any other way.
Because there is no other way.
No,
There is
right.
no other
There
way.
is no other way.
Yes. You're put on
I
this
love
planet to
that.
live this one life the way that you want it to live. And no matter how ups and downs and left and rights, whatever it does, that's the way you were supposed to live it. And no one else can tell you anything else.
Yeah, let's lean into that. And one of the big foundations of this community I'm putting together is we all think we want one thing, or we're told we should want one thing, I should say. But the community is about figuring out what the hell it is that you want.
Yes.
Not what you think you want or what everybody's telling you should want, but what you actually want.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, yes. Well,
Gets me fired
please
up.
let me know because I want to join that community.
Sweet. Yep. You're going to be the first member. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Jenn, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been so validating.
Absolutely. Same here. Thank
And
you.
I just know our listeners are going to get a lot from this, especially those in the LGBTQI plus community, because our voices aren't always heard.
But we're changing that. We're going to.
We are.
Yes, and you started, so I'm very, very happy. We've got you.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm coming into the community to
You are, and you're already doing work as a coach, which is changing lives. And I think it's important to remember that even one person can make change. So it's that small drop in the ocean, which is such a cliche, right? But it does have a ripple effect.
It does.
My conversation with you is going to affect someone who's listening, and they might tell someone else, and it's just going to keep growing from there. So let's not lose hope, people.
I love that. Beautiful.
Thank you, Jenn.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so, so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.